pandemic that would reduce the world's excess population and make the global populace more receptive to international law was a cherished dream of the money cartel, including the Rockefellers, Bill and Melinda Gates, George Soros, and Ted Turner. In the past, members of the cartel had championed the causes of eugenics, birth control, and abortion on demand. They had developed vaccines that sterilized millions of women and genetically modified corn that acted as a spermicide. By the second decade of the 21st century, the cartel had managed to convince hundreds of millions of people that overpopulation was the leading cause not only of the depletion of the world's natural resources, including land and water, but also of climate change. They had also convinced the public that overpopulation was to blame for the growing fear that carbon emissions were melting ice caps, raising sea levels, starving polar bears, and making the world an uninhabitable desert. 15 of every 16 humans must be eliminated. Speaking at the TED 2010 conference in Long Beach, California, Microsoft founder Bill Gates said, "First, we got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. Other members of the cartel believe that a 15% reduction is far too little, and that 15 of every 16 humans on planet Earth must be eliminated. Media mogul Ted Turner has argued that a 95% reduction of the world's population to a sustainable level of 225 to 300 million people would be ideal. But would the cartel actually make plans to achieve this goal? The scenario for the future of technology. The thought of reducing our global population by 95% seems incomprehensible, save for the Rockefeller Foundation's 2010 report titled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. This report envisions the economic and political benefits that could be reaped by the spread of a global pandemic that infects 20% of the world's population and kills more than 8 million people within the course of several months. The pandemic, as imagined by the Rockefeller futurists, would produce a deadly effect on international and national economics, debilitating the airline, entertainment, and tourist industries, and disrupting the global supply chain so that certain commodities, including common disinfectants, would become increasingly valuable. Within every major city, once bustling shops and stores would be forced to close, and streets would be emptied of all pedestrians. The plague would disseminate the planet, though disproportionate numbers of people would die in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus would spread like wildfire due to the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment would be a challenge. Creating the New World Order. If the Rockefeller Foundation scenario were to become a reality, airtight rules and regulations would be imposed on all the citizens of the world by the managers of the world's economy in response to the pandemic. Body temperature checkpoints would be installed at the entrances to communal spaces, including airports, train stations, supermarkets, and churches. Anyone deemed a threat, even if he or she did not have the virus, would be placed in quarantine. Political functions would come to a screeching halt, and political protesters would not be allowed to assemble. This would bring into play a global government that would control all aspects of life on planet Earth. The world's citizens would be happy to surrender their personal freedoms for the sake of safety and stability, so managers of the global government would have boundless latitude to impose laws that serve their private interests. They could freely control fossil fuel emissions, institute a carbon tax, and mandate the use of green energy. The Strange Simulation. On October 18, 2019, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, mounted Event 201, a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. The simulation took place behind closed doors and was closed to the press. The participants, including government and UN officials, international bankers, and big business officials, noted that the countries of the world were ill-equipped to provide antiviral drugs and even sufficient supplies of hand sanitizers, face masks, and water purification chemicals. The shortages would increase as long as the virus continued to spread.